Namaste to all of you. Welcome back to my channel. This is Anvi Prabhu with you. This is going to be a pretty long episode, so grab a cup of tea or coffee and let's get started. So recently, Sadhguru, who is probably the most well-known, well-respected and well-followed spiritual teachers from India in today's world, has now come under fire. So the complaint is basically that he is forcing young women to stay at his ashram, at his spiritual place, which is at Coimbatore in South India, and that he's forcing these young women to take up the order of monkhood and to become sannyasis. We are definitely going to delve deeper into the incident itself, but I feel like there is so much to unpack here. There are so many underlying layers, and I wanted to take this opportunity to dive deeper into this subject because this is something that I hold very close to my heart. So Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma is called more as a way of life rather than as a religion. And as we all know, it is one of the oldest religions in the world, which is still being followed to this day. And there are so many misunderstandings and so many misrepresentations of this religion that, I feel sometimes I need to speak about them. Not that I'm an expert in religious matters, not at all, but I do have an innate understanding because I've been born and brought up in a Hindu family. I'm a practicing Hindu, though I consider myself an atheist. I know that seems like a paradox, but we'll get into that a bit deeper later on. And I've also seen the incidents in India on the ground. I've spent most of my life there. So you might call it the politicization of the religion, you might call it misrepresentation of the religion, or you might call it a lack of knowledge of that particular religion. But no matter what the case, this needs to be addressed. Though India has given the greatest gift of yoga to the world, there are still a few, right-wing Western political commentators who come from the Judeo-Christian viewpoint who deem yoga to be demonic. And I have heard this from Matt Walsh as well, who is one of the commentators that I listen to quite often. And this is because every Abrahamic faith considers Hinduism to be inferior to it. So I'll start by stating a few facts of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma itself, some of which I feel like are extremely misrepresented and misunderstood in today's times. So, as I said, it is the oldest religion. We do not have one particular religious book that we all follow. There are several texts. There are the Vedas, the Upanishads, and of course, we all know of the Bhagavad Gita. So, there is an extensive base of knowledge within Hinduism. And we also do not follow one particular god. There are several gods, which I feel is such a point of confusion with everybody. So, to put it briefly, we do accept that there is one ultimate supreme power, the supreme eternal power, but we also acknowledge the existence of various manifestations of that power, which are the various gods and goddesses. I think the best analogy would be the analogy of electricity. So electricity is a power in itself. It is the main source, and you can harness that electricity to power your lights, to power your fans, to power various appliances as and when you need them. I guess that is kind of how you could probably have an understanding, a basic understanding of the several gods and goddesses in Hinduism. Though the ultimate power is one and the same, there are different manifestations of it according to what a person might need in different points of his or her life. So, for example, if you're someone who wants to seek more wealth and material opulence, then you worship goddess Lakshmi. There are specific rituals and prayers and mantras for that. If you are in search of knowledge, then you worship goddess Saraswati. There are specific rituals, mantras, and practices that you do for that. So basically put, this is the logic behind the many manifestations, behind the many gods and goddesses that we see. And Hinduism also does not claim to be the one and only religion, the only correct path to God, because personally I don't think there is any correct path to God. I feel like every path that you take leads to God, if you do believe in God, that is. So Hinduism does not claim to be the one and all. So in a way, Hinduism is a very adaptable religion. It's a very free religion. That does not mean it does not hold any strength or any value, intrinsic value within itself. It does. But the thing is, it gives you complete freedom as a follower or as a seeker. So even within Hinduism, you can be a believer, you can be a non-believer or an atheist, but that does not make you like an outcast from the religion, from the fold of religion itself. There is another older detailed video that I've made about my perspectives on Hinduism. I'm linking it down below, and I think it should pop up somewhere here as well. Make sure to have a look at that as well if you want to listen to a bit more of my thoughts about this. Now, unfortunately, Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma is considered as an inferior religion, an inferior faith by all Abrahamic faiths, by both Islam and Christianity. Now, me saying this does not make me Islamophobic or Christianophobic or whatever. I'm just stating facts. Christianity also claims to be the true religion, and Jesus is the correct only way to God. Islam, of course, also proclaims the same, that it is the only correct path to God. And because Hinduism does not do this, and Hinduism also does not stress on conversions as such, it is unfortunately considered as inferior. It is unfortunately considered as pagan, if you use the word pagan in a very derogatory manner, which I also don't agree with. And so because of this, India has seen mass conversions, mass violence on the basis of religion. We have had Islamic conquests. We've had thousands upon thousands of temples demolished because they were considered as the wrong path or the incorrect path or something that would offend God as such. We have had, of course, the Christian missionaries who came, and there have been mass conversions. And what do you do when you're trying to convert somebody of a particular faith to another faith? You put in an effort to make these people believe that somehow their culture and their religion is inferior to the other religion that you're trying to convert them to. And you also use forceful tactics to force them to convert. So the Islamic invaders imposed the jizya tax, which was basically a higher amount of tax to people who refused to convert to Islam. But if you accepted to convert to Islam, then you were forgiven the tax. You did not have to pay that tax. Christian missionaries did the same. They targeted Hindu scriptures, Hindu priests. They bribed people, especially the economically backward people, with food and groceries and free education for their children if they agreed to convert to Christianity. Here, I'm literally touching on the bare surface. So you can take any point that I have spoken about and you can go much, much, much deeper into the subject, and you will uncover a lot of other things that, unfortunately, I feel that people of today's world do not know of, are not aware of, and have forgotten. So the basic point is that Hinduism, unfortunately, is still considered as an inferior religion and the incorrect or the offensive path to God, to put it in a more harsh manner. Now, another point that I want to speak about briefly is the caste system, because no matter with whom I have a conversation about Hinduism or about faith and religion, the one point that definitely all the time comes up is the point about the caste system. So yes, there is the caste system, or rather the Varna system, which Varna is like the technical original Sanskrit term for this. This is basically people divided on the basis of their occupation. So you have the Brahmanas, who are the educators, who are the seekers and the keepers of knowledge and who disseminate knowledge to the younger generation and to society at large. You have the Kshatriyas, which is the military class, the army of the country, the military, the people who go to war. That's the Kshatriyas. You have the Vaishyas, which is basically the mercantile class, the merchants, people who trade, people who do businesses, people who sell. That is the Vaishyas. And then finally you have the Shudras, which are the day-to-day laborers. So the shoemakers, the barbers, the tailors, and all of them. So the reason I refuse to use the word caste system is because caste is actually derived from a Portuguese word called casta, which basically means pure lineage, and it does not in any way represent the actual essence of the Varna. So obviously the Portuguese were the first ones to come to India, and which is why the term that they used was caste system to understand the hierarchies, the so-called hierarchies or the divisions that they saw in society. I would actually say that the Varna system is less to do with hierarchy. It's not about who is higher or who is lower. It is rather to do with a division in a horizontal sense. So if you divide in a vertical sense, you have lower and higher and all those viewpoints. But if you look at it from a horizontal sense, they are just different sections of the society, and they are divided on the basis of the work that they do and the occupation that they do. And as far as I know, there was also no compulsion of following the same varna that you were born into. So if you're born into a Kshatriya family, there was no compulsion that you would automatically enroll into the army. It would depend on your individual personality, your individual inclinations. So people had that freedom to choose whichever varna that they wanted to go into and they wanted to follow in their life. Having said this, does it mean that there has been absolutely no discrimination or violence on the basis of caste or varna in India? Definitely not. And I think it would be stupid to turn a blind eye to that. Yes, the essence is something totally different, but there have been people throughout history who have misrepresented it, who have misused the system for their own selfish gains. So, yes, there have been discriminations in society based on varna. There have been horrific practices which have developed, especially in the post-industrial era, like the untouchability that you hear of, and Shudras, which has unfortunately become a derogatory term, which is not, it's just the technical name for people who do day-to-day labor. And people were unfortunately considered as, being inferior or lower, and they were discriminated against. And a lot of, societal injustice has been meted out to certain sections of the people. But as I said, you cannot throw out the baby with the bathwater. So I think it is really important to understand the origins of a particular practice or a system that you are trying to be critical about or you're trying to judge. Look at the original intentions and then look at whether those original intentions were followed and practiced, how they were misrepresented, and how society was misguided by a select few. And now going back to my previous point where I said that if you have to attack a particular culture or a faith, you make those followers believe that somehow their faith or their culture is inferior, which is what, having this Western eye on the Varna system and then translating it into the caste system did to that particular system. People started discriminating on the grounds of their caste or their Varnas, and that's continued to the present day. Now, the final point, which I feel is really important for us to know before we delve into the Sadhguru incident, is the point about the 4 stages of a human life that Hinduism espouses. So this is basically like a guideline, an outline of the 4 stages that any human would go through. So the first is the brahmacharya, which is basically your childhood and your educative years where you're learning and knowing about life. Second is the grihastha, where you get married, you grow a family, you accept responsibilities. The third is the vanaprastha, which literally means going towards the forest. So symbolically, it is like once you have completed all your duties towards your family and your children, you turn your eyes towards spirituality. You start detaching from the material attachments of the world, and that is Varanashrama. And then finally, you have the sannyasa, which is the order of monkhood, to loosely translate it to English, where you completely immerse yourself into spirituality, into spiritual teachings, into studying the spiritual texts and disseminating that knowledge. And here again, there is no compulsion. This is just a basic outline for a human being. There are some people who are born naturally very spiritually evolved and inclined. They have no interest in getting married. So those people do not actually have to take up grihastha. They do not have to get married and take up those responsibilities. They can directly go into sannyasa. So now that we have this overarching understanding of Hinduism and its nuances, let's go into the incident itself. So as I said, Sadhguru is one of the most well-known and well-respected and well-followed spiritual masters of today's world from India, and there have been several other allegations against him prior to this as well. So as I said, if you have to attack a particular faith or religion, you attack its roots. you attack its base of knowledge, you attack the people who represent that particular faith and culture, so that, somehow it plays on you psychologically. The minute you are made to feel like a person who represents a particular culture is in the wrong, or is inferior, then you automatically assume that the faith that they represent or the culture that they represent is also wrong and inferior. So this complaint was filed by a retired professor whose two daughters were Geeta Kamraj, who is 42 years old, and Lata Kamraj, who is 39. And in the complaint, he has said that his daughters have been brainwashed and then converted as monks. They've been forced to take up sannyasa, and they are residing at Sadhguru's ashram, and that they are not allowed to meet their family members. The elder daughter was an engineer, and she had been married prior, before divorcing in 2008. In 2012, she joined the yoga course at Isha and has apparently stayed there since then. The younger daughter, also a software engineer, followed in the footsteps of her older sister and also ultimately chose to stay at Isha Foundation. And the allegation is that, certain foods and medicines are given in that ashram that messes with the brains of people and makes them cut ties with the family. The father has also alleged that his daughters only spoke like a few sentences to them. So they would apparently say, "Oh, you came here to see me and now you have seen me. You can leave now." The complaint was filed in Tamil Nadu, and basically the Madras High Court has also asked very blatantly, why is it that Sadhguru encourages young women to shave their heads and accept monkhood and become sannyasis while his own daughter is happily married? Now, as I said, there is no sense of compulsion with who has to become a sannyasi or who has to get married. It depends on your individual choices, your individual personalities, and what you want out of yourself and what you want out of your own life. And as per the Indian Express, the two women who were also presented at the Supreme Court have very clearly stated that they are there out of their own volition and that there is no compulsion or any sense of detention involved in this. Isha Foundation has also replied back saying that we do not ask people to get married or take up these codes. These are individual choices. The foundation is home to thousands of people and only a few have chosen monkhood. I think another point that comes to my mind is the state of our society at large, not just India, anywhere in the world, how the institution of marriage is heaped upon everybody. And if you're not married, you're somehow, not living a full life. You are missing out on something. And there is the sense of intrinsic and inherent expectation that everybody will live their lives according to this like set timetable, that they will get educated, get married, have kids, and I don't need to stress on that. So it's really funny to see how that sense of importance on certain social institutions are still being continued and still being forced.
I'm Mayu from Isha Yoga Center. This is regarding the allegation that our parents have given that we are staying here against our wishes and we've been forced to stay here. I would like to clarify that I'm here out of my own wish and my interest. I'm here because this is the only thing that would give me fulfillment and happiness. It's not that I chose this blindly all of a sudden. It's been 7 years since I came here, and I give sufficient time for my parents to understand this and for me also to look into this, because we are always encouraged here to marry and volunteer from outside because that's the general way of life. But if you want to take this step, they see your commitment and see that if this is what you really want, and only then they give this sannyas to somebody. And I've taken this because Sadhguru is a contemporary guru whose work has touched millions of lives, and what he has offered has touched me so deeply that this is the only way I can find fulfillment in my life, and this is the only thing that makes sense to me. I would like to live this way and live for it. So that's why I've taken this step. And I see that being a woman, giving this equal opportunity to be on the spiritual path is something phenomenal. And that's where true freedom is, that I can choose this because this is what I want to do.
And what is also funny is that after this complaint was filed initially in Madras High Court, the kind of action that was taken against Sadhguru and Isha Foundation. So apparently about 150 policemen went in and barged into the foundation. Now remember, these are not 2-year-olds or 10-year-old girls who have been kidnapped. Not that older women do not need protection. I'm not saying that at all. But just the circumstance, I don't think it validated this kind of an action. Because if you remember, about a month ago, there was this horrendous, horrific rape and murder of a doctor on duty in the hospital. Were there 150 policemen there? No. There were policemen who were sitting there and allowing rioters to destroy the scene of crime so that, the evidences can be tampered with. There were policemen who were sitting there watching as the rooms next to the scene of crime was being demolished. So if you're going to talk about law and order, I would love to see that same law and order applied equally to every single situation. Why was that woman's life not valuable enough for 150 policemen to actually barge in there and make sure that justice was meted out? So anyway, if it did come from a very empathic position, then well done to the police for taking such quick action. But the problem is, and the fact that makes me doubt these kind of actions, is that it is not taken uniformly with every single incident. That is what makes it feel like this is just a politicization. It not feel like, it makes it clear that this is a politicization and this is an attack on a particular person and an institution and on a particular idea. So anyway, about 150 policemen barged in, and but I think Isha Foundation has been pretty compliant. They have been doing whatever they are required to do in such a situation. And to be honest, I don't think this is a very new thing as well. Like many of you, especially even if you're not from India, even if you're watching from UK or USA, I'm sure you would have heard about the extreme Hindu nationalism that is on the rise in India. You would have heard about minorities being, mistreated in India, about Modi being like this kind of like modern day Hitler of India and all of that jargon. So again, does that mean that there is absolutely no incident of discrimination against any of the minorities? No. It's a society. No society can be imperfect. As sad as it makes me to say this, I've come to the firm belief that no matter what political system you have, no matter what social system you have or religion you have, you cannot have a perfect society. Like human nature does not allow that to happen. So yes, there have been incidents and stuff, but it's all blown out of proportion. And more than anything, people do not know the backstories behind them. People do not know what has actually happening on the ground. And as I said, a lot of history is also unfortunately forgotten. So, and it's not just the international media or just the people in media, even politicians and general people, it's very sad to see that sense of inferiority about one's own culture and faith. Udayanidhi Stalin, who's like the deputy CM of Tamil Nadu, has literally compared Hinduism to malaria and dengue. Just for 1 second, imagine if this was a comparison done with any other Abrahamic faith. Just imagine the kind of reaction that it would have garnered from everybody. So when you look at any incident or when you look at any event that is happening, whether it is in India or abroad or no matter which country it happens in, please make sure that you take the time to know the nuances behind them. It's very easy to use hi-fi language and use very big words like genocide and fascism and Nazism and whatnot and make it feel like something really, really terrible is happening somewhere. But when you truly look at it deeply, then you realize all the underlying layers beneath it. And then I think that's probably the perfect way to go about in today's society with so much happening everywhere, the world around, and in such a fast-paced society as well. Sometimes becomes so very difficult to take that pause and look back, look at the nuances and look deeper. We'll see how the situation unfolds, and I'll definitely come back with another video if there are any major developments in this case. Please do comment below and let me know what your opinions are, what your thoughts are. I would love for all of you to join in the conversation. And as usual, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It would really help me to grow a lot and to reach more people. And also please do like and share the video. Until next time, take care.